folks. Welcome to Stronger. Sometimes it's really tough to move on. We're in this series on time to move on. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's really tough because moving on is not just changing your external circumstances.
Yeah.
It's changing something internally. It's always the internal dials. The outside can be very stimulating, a lot of work, but it's the inside job of changes that get us.
Yeah.
And so we're going to spend a couple days kind of focused on those kinds of things. But first, we're going to read some scriptures in Genesis 32, 24, 26. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. If you missed Sunday's message, watch Sunday's message. Then I don't have to do all this. I won't be doing all this background stuff. So when the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, "Let me go, for it's daybreak." But Jacob replied, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." Now we're going to talk about God's testing. We talked about it on Sunday too. God tests us at times, and a test is never a fun thing. I don't know. I kind of like them because it tells me where I'm at with things. But anyway, let's just flip back to verse 30 or to verse 26. And in verse 26, or where are we? Yeah, 24, sorry. So Jacob was left alone. Let's just start with a few points here.
Yeah.
Tests often come with that phrase in mind.
Absolutely. Yeah, I find sometimes when I'm going through trial, I take great comfort in not being in that position of alone. I want to pad myself with people and busyness and distraction. But sometimes God's greatest work, those biggest tests, we have to be alone for so we can pay attention and really get what we need to get from it.
I even think of even Jesus when he was tempted in the wilderness. He was alone. He was by himself. Paul, often his biggest times of testing were when he was arrested and alone in prison or whatever. Peter, he was alone when he denied the Lord. All these things happen when these guys were alone.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good point. That being alone, we can fight that.
Yes.
But the fact is, sometimes God's requiring it.
Yes.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
He wants the uno on uno, mano on mano.
Well, it's easy to distract ourselves. Hey, if you got somebody else there, it's easy to even change the conversation. But when it's just you and God.
And he'll do what he needs to do to get us there. He'll do what he needs to do to get us in that corner where he can really have that one-on-one with us.
But he's testing because you see, again, it's the interior that holds us up from moving on.
Yes.
And it's always been Jacob's interior that's got him messed up.
Yeah.
Not his exterior circumstances. They got messed up by his interior circumstances.
That's right.
Yeah.
But isn't that us?
Yeah, landmines, right? You set your own landmines.
Yeah, we set our own.
Step in them, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that guy was doing it. So the interior needed a wrestle.
Yeah.
And he finally got himself to the point where he would do this with God.
Yeah.
He went, "I got to meet with you."
Yep.
Right.
Then it says, "And a man wrestled with him till daybreak." Now, this is an interesting thing. I like this part. God allowed himself. This is, I've said on Sunday, and it's so true. If God chooses that he will wrestle with you, you have to understand what an act of graciousness that is.
Right.
Because God could pin you in a millisecond.
Absolutely.
He doesn't even have to enter a wrestle with you. He could just say,
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
if you're going to wrestle, forget it. I'm not interested. He means he's interested.
Yeah.
When he wrestles, he's interested in you.
Absolutely. Take that as wow, he loves me that much, that he cares that much about this process and that much about who I'm becoming, that he would actually engage in this with me. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Exactly. It's not about what we can do. It's not about how strong we are. It's about who we're becoming to God. That's what he's more concerned with.
Very much is he concerned with that. It says, when the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Now, this is interesting. See, when God wrestled Jacob, he actually put himself into a physical form and said, "Okay, well, I'll wrestle with you on a human condition."
Right. Yeah.
Right.
You want to go two men wrestling? Okay.
Let's
Strength
do it.
to strength, man. I'll do that for you.
Yeah.
And it was all night.
It was.
Yeah.
And wow, that Jacob was that strong, but like he had dug himself into this position, this area of character where he was at, so much so that in this human form, it says, like, when the man saw he couldn't, so he touched his strength.
Yeah.
That's how bad, it shows how bad Jacob did not want to face the next day.
Yeah.
And I can relate to that. You know, I think we talked about it earlier, dreading the next day,
Yeah.
the coming day. Like, you know what's coming. There's nothing in you that wants to be there or to have to do what you need to do. But in this case, God met him where he was at.
Yeah.
And he did what he needed to do in order to prepare Jacob for that.
Yeah.
Strength to strength is an interesting thing. Why would God weaken himself to such a degree as to say, I'm going to let your strength have a play in this? You want to live by your strength and wrestle with me? I'll limit myself to your abilities or your strength, right?
Yeah.
Why would he do that other than love?
Yeah.
And he really, his strategy is
Yeah.
inside.
Yeah, it's hard to understand and hard to believe sometimes, but I think God does this so much in our lives where he'll just do what needs to be done to get us to that place where we need to stand and make that choice and say, okay, look, everything's on the line. It's A or B.
Yeah.
You know?
It's like,
Yeah.
A or B.
It's like he's saying,
And that led us into the next thing here. Then the man said, let me go, for it's daybreak. More or less, and this is what Brent was talking about. You know, Brent, this was this dreading this day. This was a day he was not looking forward to. He got Esau with 400 riders, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And last time he talked to Esau, he was a very revenge-oriented man with great strengths.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he far exceeded Jacob's capabilities.
Absolutely.
And he had another person that could put him on the ground. It's interesting, you know. If you're going to have struggle with people that are much stronger than you and could put you on the ground, maybe you should wrestle with God first.
Yeah, right? Like his strengths were not going to hold up against Esau. When he met Esau, he wasn't going to win that with his strengths. He had to be taken down. His strengths, what he normally relied on, had to be wiped out. There had to be a real change within and for who he was becoming so that he could meet that day with God's strength, which was the only chance he stood.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes I think we go directly to wrestle with other people, and we forget this wrestle with God that's so necessary. But it was in this wrestle with God that Jacob could go and meet Esau with the superior strengths.
Right.
You're up against things all the time that are stronger than you.
Absolutely.
Well, doesn't it make sense to wrestle with the omnipotent God first because he's willing?
exactly, yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
he's willing.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
It's like he's saying, I'm going to meet you where you're at, where your strengths are at, but we're not going to stay here.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So Jacob's reply to the question, or the man said, let me go, for it is daybreak. It was more or less God is saying, hey, we're starting the new day. You know what awaits you. And but Jacob replied, I will not let you go unless you bless me. And I think the obvious question here is, how much do you need God?
Yes.
I mean, we need him far more than we think we need him.
Absolutely.
And the only way to get that is this kind of hanging on.
Yeah.
You're going to hold on to God
Everything.
until you get what you know you need. Well, that is a core of faith. And Jesus talked about it in many parables, about persistence of prayer and knocking on the door. And, you know, all of this was that persistence factor. This guy knew what he needed.
Yep.
He knew that if he didn't get that blessing, he was not ready for this new day.
And that really showed that he was finally in that position where he knew that how much he needed God, you know. But previous, he was relying so much on his own strengths. But after this, it was, I'm not letting you go. I'm not going into this without you. And so we take that into our marriages, into our parenting, into our finances. God, I'm not letting you go until you give me your blessing, until you do this. I can't do it. I need you.
Yes. Too often, I think we find ourselves going and wrestling with our issues with our children and grown children, and going and wrestling with our spouses on those issues, or wrestling with our finance, or wrestling with, we go directly to those wrestles, right?
Yes.
And God is saying, man, You want to go into the new day, the new dawn that way? I'll let you.
Yeah.
But I came to wrestle with you.
Yeah.
So that I want to see in your heart this deep desire for my blessing.
Yeah.
If you show me that, I'll give it to you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's a great thing.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Wrestle. Don't let go. How deep is your desire? How much do you want God in your new day?